The National Bureau of Statistics says the Consumer Price Index fell to 20.1% in August from 21.9% in July. Food and energy prices slowed sharply. Year-on-year, headline inflation dropped to 12%, far lower than the 32% recorded a year ago after rebasing. Food inflation also fell, helped by lower prices of rice, maize, flour, sorghum, and other staples. Urban inflation is now below 20%, while rural inflation stands at 20.3%. The highest state inflation rates were recorded in Ekiti, Kano, and Oyo, while Zamfara, Anambra, and Enugu had the lowest. On the same day, Finance Minister Wale Edun ordered an immediate suspension of the 4% free on-board charge on all imports. He said the levy was hurting trade and adding to inflation and business cost. The suspension will allow further talks with stakeholders and a full review of the custom revenue framework. Analysts say both moves could ease pressure on businesses and consumers, but stress that reforms must continue to stabilize prices. Well, time to take some expert analysis of the continued fall in inflation, factors responsible, and if that signifies that the Nigerian economy is getting out of the woods. Development experts Gbolahan Olojede joins us now on Newsday. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good afternoon.
Well, first of all, let me start with, do you trust this data that we are getting? Some analysts have actually questioned the accuracy. Have they been manipulated?
I don't think so, because there are certain things that are easily, that we can easily follow because they've been there historically. And there are those that are by virtue of certain policies. So part of the things that have been, cyclical, that have been annual, is seasonality of food items. Yam is back in the market. Plantain is back in the market. So we're in the harvest season, which will continue up until late in the year. So that is a natural thing, and nobody can deny that when you go to any of the market, you see a lot of those products out there. The other part, which might have to do with policy, is certain prices. You spoke about sorghum, rice, and some other items. These were being cushioned by importation. So when you import and you improve the supply that is in the market, the prices come down. And one thing that has been established over the years of aggravated inflation is that food inflation was a major factor. So whatever you do that brings down that food inflation, or whatever happens to bring down food inflation, will automatically have an effect on the headline inflation.
Well, thanks so much for clarifying that. So what would you say are the key factors, contributing to this fall in inflation in Nigeria, and how can it be sustained?
The number one is food, because food has historically been a key driver. Even when we had inflation at 30% or 25%, you might have food inflation at 5% higher than the headline inflation. So now that we are entering into the season of harvest, that will moderate prices a little bit. And then the importation that's, of certain product items, I think this was a deliberate policy of government to bring down prices. Those will help to moderate food prices and therefore moderate the total inflation number that we have in the economy. Is this sustainable? Reasonably so if we do the right things. I heard recently that government is trying to see how they can deal with the issue around transportation. Because the people that bring food from the north to the south are saying, look, across every state or wherever they have to pass through, there are more or less tax collectors, informal tax collectors along the way that are extorting them. By the time the food gets to the south, all the costs that have been incurred over the transportation will be put on the food. So if government is going to do something about that, it will help. Government is talking about post-harvest losses. What exactly does it intend to do about it? How can we curb a situation in which a farmer may lose up to 40% of what he has produced, to rottenness and, damage and all the rest of it? So if things are done along that line, it will help. If things are done along the line of insecurity where there are farming population, it will also help. So is it sustainable? It is sustainable as we continue to do the right things that will support the process.
So I'm wondering how this fall in inflation rate will affect Nigeria's debt servicing, savings and investment.
Maybe not directly linked, but it could be indirect. You see, when food prices go down, the percentage of the citizens' income that goes into food will also reduce. It means that they have more disposable income to expend on other items. As citizens are able to consume more, they stimulate production in the economy. And once the economy is booming, of course, there will be, tax income for the government as well. There is a positive effect for everybody, both the government and the people. And that could help us in moderating how much we need to borrow. Some of our borrowings is going into certain intervention. If the economy itself is booming, it might reduce the amount of money we spend into, let's give some people cash, let's buy food for some, it might reduce all of that. And then, other borrowings as well might reduce. But then, it's not a direct linkage to borrowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how have interest rate adjustment by the central bank, impacted inflation rates? And what role has fiscal policy played in controlling inflation?
CBN has not exactly been adjusting the MPR. MPR has been at that rate for, at that neighborhood for a long time. As a matter of fact, it came all the way from a little above 18% and went all the way to 28%. So the reason is understandable. CBN has a mandate to control inflation. And the instrument that is available for CBN is the interest rate. So that is why it has done what it has done. What we might be looking forward to is, okay, you want to control inflation. If that inflation has now gone down for 5 successive months, are you comfortable enough now to drop the rate a little bit? That is left to be seen. MPC is next week, so we'll see what they come out from. From that meeting. If you ask me, I would think maybe they may want to take a cautious approach and drop, even if it's 25 basis points, and let's see how that play out in the economy. Otherwise, we may see a retention of rate, as it were.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what policies, or should I say, are there policies that the government can implement to sustain the decline in inflation and also promote economic stability?
There are some of them that they are already doing, but they need to, One of the things that has happened over the past 1 year plus is the relative stability of the exchange rate. So whatever we have done, because that stability has impacted corporate profits. So today, if you go on, let's say, the NGX, and you take the companies that are listed on the NGX, and you look at their half-year result, 2025 half-year, and you compare it with half-year 2024, you can see the recovery will stare at you very boldly. So it is there, right there. Now, the question is, so what are those things that led to that? One of it is the exchange rate stability. As a matter of fact, in the current year, the exchange rate has actually, the naira has actually marginally appreciated against the dollar. So whatever we do to sustain that stability is a key policy issue that will help in stability of what we're getting right now. Then every other thing that relates to food, I'm always an advocate of. Number one thing is that food, because food impacts everybody. One of the problems that this nation has suffered from in the past is non-inclusive growth. Literally, we've been growing almost all the time. But you see, it's only a few people growing, and then the rest of the people are not feeling the impact. So to be able to drive inclusiveness, one of the key factors we need to deal with is food matter, because it cuts across the rich, the poor, the average, everybody. So policies that will help us make food available and affordable will be a great policy that will help to sustain whatever we are seeing right now.
Now, when we talk about a decline in inflation rate, it does sound great on paper, but I do know that a lot of Nigerians are still complaining, of hunger, they're facing unemployment, economic hardship. So as we are getting reports of a decline in inflation, what measures can also be taken to protect low-income earners, the vulnerable population?
Okay. Government needs to study the things that are making the changes that we are seeing right now. I just spoke about the issue of corporate profit that have recovered. Now, that corporate profit recovery, it is important to ask the vital questions. How did it recover? What are the factors that were responsible for this recovery? Otherwise, we will see that recovery and it still will not percolate down to the bottom rung of the ladder. The same thing you were talking about, even, declining inflation. We might say it, and then the people at the bottom rung of the ladder might say, I didn't get anything cheaper when I got to the market. So government has to be deliberate. One of the things I've seen, because now that we're talking of prices of sorghum and grains going down on the market, there are certain kind of intervention. I learned government even want to control prices. How do you control prices if you are not planting yourself? So what I've seen happen in some other economy on a temporary basis, I'm emphasizing that, is government in itself buying grains from the farmers in the harvest season when it is plentiful and storing it up. What you do is that you are able to help the farmer to get the right value for their sweat when you are also buying from them, rather than allowing the price to crash on them because there's so much of those products at the same time. So government buys and keep. And then when the scarcity time comes and prices go dramatically up, government can say, look, I have these things in my storage. I'm going to release a little bit to ease the prices in the market. That's an intervention. Government also need to intervene in the issue of farming input or farm input. So from fertilizers to the right seedlings. One of the main problems of our agricultural production is yield. Our yield is poor in almost all the product category. So if we can help the farmer to ensure that the yield will improve, it will help a great deal. So these are our policy areas that we can look at to help sustain what we have.
Okay, so just before I let you go, is this an indication that the Nigerian economy is out of the woods? Some analysts believe that the government needs to balance controlling inflation with the need to promote economic growth and development. How can they do both?
Number one, I don't think it is uhuru yet, but I believe there is recovery, and there's a glaring evidence of recovery. And we must be able to analyze what that means for us and make it count for everybody. We have to be deliberate about it. Otherwise, the growth will be there, but it will not go down. Not everybody will feel it. What's the other question you asked?
The need to balance, controlling inflation with also boosting economic growth and development.
It's a very delicate balance, very, very delicate. Which is why we have seen the CBN over the last few months still watching. Why people are saying, inflation is decreasing now, why don't you cut down the rate? He said, look, there are other fragilities. It's still fragile. I'm looking at this and this and these other factors. Then I can bring down the rate. So I believe the policymakers will continue to watch that space. And when they see that the resilience that we have built is strong enough, make the decision. It's a very delicate balance. Whether it is here, even in America, there is a decision on rate cut that is going to happen. And it is not easy to make that decision because they are caught in between the same problem that you just spoke about.
All right. Development experts, Gbolahan Olojede, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.